What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, it just continues. The madness never ends. In the last 24 hours, George Pickens has made his voice heard without trying to make his voice heard on the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation. We're talking about a Broncos wide receiver who somebody in Denver believes is going to end up in Pittsburgh this offseason. Yet again, the Pittsburgh Steelers get the asking price for Matthew Stafford. And, well, we were all bamboozled, my friend. We were all bamboozled by the man, the myth, the legend himself. We will get there in a second. But I got to tell you, I have a new favorite player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. There is no competition, to be honest with you. I think I've had an actual conversation with this guy 2 times ever in my life, like real conversation, not interview, real conversation, maybe twice. Guy probably doesn't even know my first name. And I'm going to be honest, there are a lot of guys in that locker room who do, who I'm very friendly with, who I respect, who respect me. They should all know that they are not my favorite player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. There is a new name who is, and we'll get there in a second. It's a beautiful one out here in the Berg. It's still freezing cold, but it be what it be. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling great today. Today was one of those days where I had so much work when I woke up this morning, but I got everything done before this 4 o'clock recording. And that always makes me feel very good. Like I get into this recording, I got a little bit of swagger behind me, but also part of that work was the AST call-in show week 2. And let me tell you, shout out to the listeners, because that was one of the most entertaining shows of all shows, not AST, but just anything I've heard over the last couple of weeks. The callers did a great job. You did a great job as well, Noah. And I'm excited for week 3 next week.
I'm pumped. When I tell you that I was like, it was the best part of my week so far, was that call-in show. You guys are fantastic. The energy that was brought through those phone calls was impeccable. It was the best way to possibly start a hump day ever. I mean, ever. I jump on that recording at like 8:15 in the morning, and I was all smiles the whole time. So that's a huge shout out to all you guys. Very appreciated for bringing what you guys brought today. If you haven't checked it out, please do. And if you want to do that again next week, please, I'm with everything in me, do it again next week, because that was a good time. You're spot on that one. The Pittsburgh Steelers, let's start with this one. We were all bamboozled, tricked, fooled, full of tomfoolery. And let me tell you, it only made this person, this whole storyline, probably 100 times better. I'm saying 2-3 days ago, something like that. Maybe it was the end of our last week. Who knows? We're talking about DeShon Elliott telling Aaron Rodgers to leave his old ass in the retirement home. And how, I mean, me and you sat here and had an actual debate about whether or not it's the same as like George Pickens going off on Instagram or something. And I was like, dude, he called out Aaron Rodgers. Like, he called out Aaron Rodgers, which is huge. And it caught ESPN. Stephen A. Smith goes off on the situation. We address it. Everybody else is talking about it. Once again, bamboozled. This morning, this picture emerges on Instagram of the one and only DeShon Elliott and the one and only Aaron Rodgers. All friendly. Why? Well, because apparently they're buddies. They are pals. And you could look at this and say, maybe they just took it. Who knows when it was taken? Who knows when they met? But they seem to be super friendly in this one. And if I've learned anything about Aaron Rodgers, because we have so much access to Aaron Rodgers, it is that he probably isn't cool with people calling him out and then just all of a sudden being cool, being friendly. So if I had to guess, DeShon Elliott and Aaron knew what was going on the whole time, probably had a great laugh when DeShon tweeted this out and said, leave his ass in the retirement home. Both of them probably had a good giggle, probably texted each other. I bet you Aaron probably wanted to like the comment when he saw it. and then everybody else freaked out. This was the best. This on top of the Colin show was the best way to start my Wednesday. I'm not going to lie. By 9:30 in the morning, I mean, I was ready. The day was complete. There was nothing left on my to-do list where I said, this will top what is happening right now. Because shout out to DeShon Elliott, only makes you love him more. Like, this dude he is one of the ultimate trolls in a good way. And I love every second of it, dude. I love every second of it. He is my favorite person in the locker room. Sorry to many people, dude. Sorry to Calvin Austin, who's been on this show. Sorry to Cam Hayward, who's just a great dude. Sorry to Joey Porter. Sorry to Spencer Anderson. Sorry to any lineman who I have named in the past as my favorite person in the locker room. DeShon Elliott, who I've spoken to twice, now holds that title. Shout out to Sean, man. Shout out to Sean.
You spoke him to him twice, but he's also liked multiple Instagram posts of us talking about him. We talked about this last week as well. It feels like he's a friend of the show. It feels like he's a friend of the show, and he's offering up some really much needed lighthearted news here in the middle of crazy quarterback season, which we'll get to. But we both said before the season even began, before he started being the best running mate that we've seen Minkah Fitzpatrick have in his time in Pittsburgh, we were all in on DeShon Elliott. I mean, he endeared himself to the Steelers fan base from his very first press conference, whenever he pointed at the logo and said, that's why I signed here. And Mike Tomlin. And of course, there's people that are going to have something to say about that, but he just seemed like he was a good character. And the entire time that he's been on the Steelers, he's been one of the most fun guys to follow along with. So this is just another, and probably the biggest feather in his cap for his off the field antics and being a positive light when it comes to Steelers news off the field.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we should be doing. That's what everybody should be doing, is taking a page out of DeShon Elliott's book and saying, sometimes, man, let's just talk smack on our friends and have a good time, because it's hilarious. And that's what he did here. So shout out to Sean, man. Keep playing the villain. Keep doing it in a way where you're not an enemy. You're just hilarious and also very productive. And I'm sure that maybe it helped this second conversation that we're about to have, because one of the Steelers wide receivers is unintentionally recruiting Aaron Rodgers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And maybe DeShon's sitting around saying, hey, I got a buddy back in Pittsburgh, a big fan of yours. Maybe you should consider popping on down and being a Steeler, which is where we'll turn our conversation to next. George Pickens made it known that he's got two dream, quote-unquote, dream teammates he would like to play with in the NFL. His first is Ed Reed. Not going to happen. Also, cool choice. Like, got to respect the choice of Ed Reed. The shout out GP. I mean, that's a good one. It's a good choice. Second,
I was going to say, I'm sure Hines Ward wanted to play with Ed Reed and not against Ed Reed too, but it's a fun choice. I like whenever people do off the wall stuff like that. Yeah.
If you're a Steeler picking a Raven, look, you could have been way worse. You could have said Myles Garrett, which would have helped, the recruitment process there, but still at the same time, and doesn't hold the ground that Ed Reed does. His second was Aaron Rodgers. And everybody talked about it immediately. Nobody held back on their thoughts towards it and about it. I don't think George Pickens was sitting here intentionally recruiting Aaron Rodgers to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I bet you Aaron Rodgers saw it, and I bet you he is well aware that George Pickens would want to play with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So very simply, I'll ask you, because I don't think it goes very deep, but I think it's initial reaction type of conversation. When you saw that, when you read that, however you came across this news, did your brain go, for a quick second, did it picture Aaron Rodgers being in Pittsburgh? Because to me, it did. My brain just flashed Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. And then I was so caught in the loop there that I started thinking about it in a positive light. I was like, there could be worse outcomes, I guess. And then I started thinking about the chaos, and I was like, dude, this is going to be the most, I might not sleep for a whole year. For a full 18 weeks, I might not sleep a drop. I will have to watch every Pat McAfee show. It got deep down the wormhole in seconds. I doubt you did the wormhole. I don't think the wormhole happened. But did you have the flash of Aaron Rodgers in a Steelers uniform?
I didn't spiral to the level that you're saying, but I did have that flash. I thought, okay, well, Aaron Rodgers and George Pickens and Devontae Adams, they could be the three best friends that anybody could have, and then they wouldn't talk to anybody else on the team.
Yeah.
But I also thought about the winking to Mike Tomlin mid-game, all that other stuff, but that all lasted for me about 90 seconds. Then I remembered what we saw from Aaron Rodgers last season and his date of birth, and remembered, he's not among the top 5 options for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So while it is fun, and I understand the timing of when this is sort of hitting mainstream versus when it actually occurred, because George said this before this season, and before the season was also when everybody and their mother was predicting the Jets to be a playoff team behind a resurgent Aaron Rodgers. I'd like to know what George would say today. If somebody said, George, would you rather have Aaron Rodgers or X quarterback that's available this offseason? I'd be interested to see what he said today, but no, it did for a second flash in my mind. Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh would be interesting. And then reality set in. I said, wouldn't be good, would probably still be interesting, but wouldn't be good for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
It was a stressful second there. It was, I think everybody had it. I think everybody read that or saw that video or whatever and immediately went, duh. Like that's probably exactly what went down. And I mean, I had it too. I got deep in there. I don't think there's a more chaotic situation in the NFL than George Pickens and Aaron Rodgers in a locker room together, unless Russell Wilson's the backup quarterback, which would be insanity. Like I'm talking, why? I don't think the NFL would be able to exist anymore. You know, I think that's the final stone. It's done. That's what we've done there. The trifecta. Wild times. Let's play a game though, real fast. Okay. You're George Pickens. Quarterbacks you'd want to play with before Aaron Rodgers this season. I'll toss a couple of them out there. You just as George Pickens, okay? You got to get in the brain of George Pickens. Do something if you do whatever you got to do if you got to do something.
Okay.
We'll start here. All right. Matthew Stafford.
Yeah. Give me Stafford. He won a Super Bowl. He has an arm. He is throwing for over 1,000 yards for a couple different wide receivers. So yeah, Matthew Stafford.
Trevor Lawrence.
No. If I'm George Pickens, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, no, he didn't look good last year. He didn't look good the year before that. No, don't give me Trevor Lawrence. And he's making more money. So it's taken away from the money I could make. So no Trevor Lawrence.
Way to get in the head of George Pickens there. Daniel Jones.
Hell no, not a chance. This guy can run more than he can throw. And I'm a wide receiver. I need you to be able to throw. So no, I don't want Daniel Jones over Aaron Rodgers. If I'm George, yeah.
Justin Fields.
Nope.
Kenny Pickett.
Nope.
Russell Wilson.
Nope.
Oh, okay. I figured that would be the toss-up. If I had to guess who George's favorite 2 quarterbacks are right now, that are like realistic, I think it's Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. I think both of them will chuck that football up, and he's well aware that they will throw that football up and that he does not care. He will get it, and they will look for him and him alone. I don't think that he's got that same faith right now in Justin. And I mean, he looked good with Justin, but once Russ got in there, that was George Pickens' time. You know, it was all George Pickens all the time. I think that's what he's looking for. So I agree with you. I like that. I like that list. I think Rodgers and Russell would be his top 2 picks right now. You disagree?
No, I think when it comes to Rodgers versus Russell, if it's George, and again, I did not talk to George. I'm not friends with George, but based on what we saw, I could feel George saying, all right, well, I worked with Russell for a time, but at the end of the season, man, he couldn't do really much of anything else other than throw it up to me. And he didn't even do that in the elite level until the playoff game once I came back from my injury. So I could see him saying, listen, Aaron has that deep ball as well, but Aaron's also going to be able to find me in underneath routes. Aaron's going to be able to throw me open over the middle of the field more than Russell Wilson can. And I think that he's going to say, well, Aaron, if he is another year removed from that Achilles, maybe him and me could be that dynamic duo that him and Devontae Adams were. Even last season, when Devontae wasn't great compared to in previous years, Aaron wasn't great compared to in previous years, and the Jets weren't great, One thing that wasn't broke was Aaron to Devontae. So I think
Yep.
George would look at that and be like, yeah, I'd like a little something. I'd like a little bit of that action.
I agree. I think George would be all in on Aaron Rodgers. I think he'd be pumped about Aaron Rodgers. I think everybody offensively would be pumped about Aaron Rodgers. I think it's hard from the inside looking out for players to have the same view of Aaron Rodgers that we would have. It'd be like if Ben went to another team at the end. People would be like, dude, like this guy, did you see him wheelbarrow himself in? Like this, there's nothing left, dude. He carried a leg with him because he couldn't put it on the ground. From the outside, that's what it would be like. On the inside, it'd be like, dude, Ben Roethlisberger's here? That's crazy. Like that's a guy right there. And I think that's what that does. I think that's how a lot of guys, George Pickens included, would view that. Now, to transition into our next conversation here, you look at Devontae Adams potentially coming with them. Do you think George would be okay with a veteran such as Devontae in a situation like Aaron Rodgers?
I think George would look at it in the way of bringing in both will open up more opportunities for me. I think George does believe that, because I think you saw that with Deontay Johnson a little bit in 2 years ago. I think he saw once Deontay came back that it opened more things up for George Pickens as well, even though Deontay was taking some of the targets. So I think he'll look at that, and I think that people will tell him, yeah, this is going to benefit you because you're not going to get double teamed. You're not going to get triple teamed. And every once in a while, you're going to get a one-on-one more so than you would if it was just Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson on the other side of things. I think George would see that right away.
Yeah. I think there's a possibility there for sure. Depending on the name, Devontae Adams, I think is where that line might be, like where you're inching one side or the other, where it could be he's going to take away from me or he's going to add to me. You know, he's too familiar with Aaron Rodgers, but he also means that I'm wide open all the time. I think you are walking that line like right at there. Whereas in, Darius Slayton, he's not taking anything away from George. He's not doing anything. He's just benefiting George, Amari Cooper, just benefiting George. But you get like a Mecca Ibuka in here, maybe he takes away from George. I think that possibility is out there, which leads into this conversation that Ben Albright out in Denver Broncos insider, believes that Courtland Sutton could be on the move once again this offseason, a name that we talked about for months last year, ignored by the end of it. Like if a Courtland Sutton topic came up, we were almost like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. We're good. We'll go to we'll change course. He believes that the Pittsburgh Steelers might go after him round 2, and he believes that it might happen, that the Pittsburgh Steelers might land Courtland Sutton. Quote, I think Pittsburgh's looking to add a receiver, not subtract one. Well, I lost the quote. I apologize. I would not be surprised if the Broncos jettison Courtland Sutton to see Sutton and Pickens pair up on the outside there in Pittsburgh. He also said that he believes the Steelers are going to bring back Russell Wilson and that they could look to pair up him and the guy who caught 10 touchdowns from him just 2 seasons ago. Russell Wilson's definitely a possibility. Courtland Sutton might be a possibility, but I mean, I don't think it's the Steelers at this point. I think the Denver Broncos might be just playing mind games with the NFL and might just be, you know what I mean? Like they're the person that's out there that's, they're flirting with you a little bit. And then at the end of every conversation, they're friend zoning you. That's the Denver Broncos. That's what it feels like. It feels like they're constantly teasing Courtland Sutton to the world one way or another, because there's no way, like, NFL insiders don't just make stuff up. They hear things from people, whether it's from a team or an agency or something, or the player themselves. They hear things. And he had to hear this from somebody who has some knowledge that the Denver Broncos may be looking to move on from Courtland Sutton. Do I think it happens? No chance. So a year removed, another year added to his contract. I believe it's like $16 million or something, $18 million this season. Are you giving up? I think last year it was a 3rd round pick for Courtland Sutton. I think this year in my head, it's a 4th, maybe even a 5th. I don't think I'm going higher than that. So I'll ask this. If you had to pick between Courtland Sutton or names on the free agency market that they could get Chris Godwin, Darius Slayton, Amari Cooper, so on and so forth. Are you going with Courtland Sutton still?
Yeah, I would put him in that mix. I don't know if I would put him firmly ahead of any of those other names. I think it comes down to what you have to pay for those other names. Plus, you have to tack on the fact that you need to actually trade something away. Even if it's a 6th or 5th, that gets added into this equation. So I would put him just player for player up there with Chris Godwin. I would put him player for player up there with Darius Slayton. As far as fits for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it comes down to contract. If he, if you can get Darius Slayton for 10, 15, instead of Courtland Sutton for 20 for his final year, then I would probably go out and get Darius Slayton, take that extra 5, and try to fill some of the other holes that you have in this lineup. I mean, shoot, that 5 pays for Jaylen Warren in and of itself. So there you go. Yeah. But if it's similar price, and if Denver is going to take some money back and give you Courtland Sutton at 15, 16, 17, and it's only going to be a 5th or 6th round pick, I still see him as a very good number 2 option for George Pickens. I think if you have Courtland Sutton in here, and I think if you go out and you still get another wide receiver in the draft, you're looking at the wide receiver room going from the biggest area of weakness on this roster to potentially the second biggest area of strength. I'm never going to put anything above their outside linebackers, but if you're running George Pickens, Courtland Sutton, let's say for example's sake, Emeka Egbuka, Roman Wilson, and Calvin Austin, then throw Benny Sko in there as well, I think that becomes one of your best lines, one of your best position groups easily. So yes, I would immediately put him in that class. And then it all depends on how the money shakes out with the free agents such as Slayton, such as Godwin.
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes, it depends on the name. I think I'd go Darius Slayton over Courtland Sutton either way. To not give up anything, I think they're almost the same player where the different skill sets, but I'm talking like level. Different, same skill level, like same level of effectiveness, same impact on your team. I think they bring the same thing. I mean, Amari Cooper is below them, but Emeka Egbuka is well above them, and Chris Godwin is above both of them. So I'd go Chris Godwin if I could get him for a reasonable deal as well. I think, which I don't expect to. I think somebody's going to toss a boatload of money at Chris Godwin. I think that's what's going to happen here. I like Courtland Sutton. I think he had a good year last year. Maybe I'm just bored. Maybe at this point I'm just like tired of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm a little petty about the situation. I'm going to go look at Denver. Stay away. I don't even care anymore. I'm not texting you back. That's what this feels like. I would still put him in that same category. But again, if Darius Slayton is $25 million, which there's a possibility, I'd go Sutton. If Darius Slayton's $15 million, I'd go Darius Slayton. I don't think I'd even have a real conversation about it because I just think that they add the same. It's less hassle. And in my mind, it's very simple. Courtland Sutton might be this year's Brandon Ayuk, where there is a team that is looking to get rid of him, but maybe not looking to get rid of him. And the Steelers can't chase that guy anymore. They can't do that twice. They have to look at this and say, we need a surefire thing. We can't go into June or July without having at least 1, maybe 2 wide receivers added to our receiver room. They can't do that. And if Sutton wants to be traded on March 9th, great, cool, wide open. March 10th, that door is beginning to shut because other names are being spoken to during the legal tampering period. That is how I'm looking at it, is that if it wants to happen earlier, cool. If it doesn't, I'm not going into April. I'm not going into May trying to negotiate for Courtland Sutton. I'm too busy already signing wide receivers and drafting wide receivers because they don't have time to wait if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, last year we waited we were in training camp. We were eating lunch at Latrobe, sitting there saying, oh, well, are they going to get Brandon Ayuk? It's only been 3 months since this conversation started. You don't want to be in the same situation. You don't want to go to camp in Latrobe and still look at your wide receiver room and say, incomplete. Yeah, we might get someone, or we might not get anybody till the trade deadline. When we do, it's Mike Williams, and we're barely going to utilize him for some reason or other. So I agree with you. If it comes earlier, then get it. Fill the roster spot. Check that box off and go on with the rest of your roster building through the summer. But I again, put them in the same bucket like you with Darius Slayton, with Chris Godwin, and it all comes down to how much are they going to cost and what's the acquisition cost of Courtland Sutton.
All right, let's finish this conversation off with Matthew Stafford. According to NFL insider Jordan Schultz, the Rams don't want to give up Matthew Stafford, but if they are going to give up Matthew Stafford, it goes at the price of a first-round draft pick. My immediate thought, wild. I mean, maybe worth it, but the Steelers aren't worth it. The Steelers aren't a team to make that trade. The Steelers shouldn't be a team to make that trade. And to be very honest with you, I don't know the team that does make that trade. I don't know the team in the NFL right now that needs a quarterback that bad who is saying, we will give up a first-round pick because we believe we're going to win a Super Bowl this season. Because that's what Matthew Stafford brings to your team, is a Super Bowl right now. He's 37 years old. You don't have 3 years. Like every year might be the last one. When you make that trade, you are making that trade for a quarterback who is going to win a Super Bowl this year, or chances are you're not going to get one. I think the Steelers are the closest team that could be on the market to that. And don't get me wrong, I would not be surprised if Art Rooney is sitting around contemplating that decision and saying, maybe we could. Maybe he is the reason. Maybe he is the guy that gets us over the hump there with no playoff win, Super Bowl. I just wanted to word that correctly. And I don't know if Mike Tomlin or Omar Khan listens to that, but I also think that if Art Rooney says jump, and he really means it, you jump because he hires you. He pays your checks. He makes the calls at the end of the day. He doesn't usually make any calls. But if he says, do this, chances are you do that. And I think he would be the only name in Pittsburgh that has that thought. I think Mike Tomlin would have that thought, but he's too cheap to do anything about it. And Omar Khan, there's no chance he's sitting around going, we should try to get Matthew Stafford. I think that's what we should do. You know, this is my third year. I would like to look really bad in a year from now and say that I was the guy that traded for Matthew Stafford. That seems like a really good move on my part to be the GM that makes that move. I don't think there's any shot the Steelers would do it, but I also think that of the teams, the Titans, the Browns, which I think the Steelers are above the Browns, the Titans, the Browns, the Jets, the Raiders, I just don't come up with a team that is on the verge of a Super Bowl who needs a quarterback. But the Steelers are the closest one to them that I think the only team that, if you were willing to make an argument, there actually is one. They should not. By no means should they. But I do think they're the closest. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers might be the only, unless I'm missing one, the only team that's looking for a quarterback that was in the playoffs last year. I mean, the Vikings, interesting situation, but they have the guy that they expected to be the starting quarterback on the roster. It's J.J. McCarthy. So
or
the
you
Steelers
bring back Sam Darnold.
Or you bring back Sam Darnold. The Steelers are the only team that right now appear to be on the verge of making the playoffs, and then for the third consecutive season, having a completely different quarterback situation than they did the previous year. It makes a little bit of sense, but for a first round pick, no. Like, they make sense as a landing spot, but outside of that, there's nothing. Like, the first round pick, no, they're not a quarterback away from a Super Bowl. You can say they're the closest of the other teams, sure, but I would say the Rams are closer than the Steelers, certainly. Yes, and if the Rams want to keep him, like, the only way that he should leave is if the Rams are like, yeah, you know, same thing as Cooper Kupp, get out, we're done. Like, no hard feelings. Thanks for the Super Bowl. Hope you had a good time. Go find colder weather somewhere. Like, the Steelers are not a team that are one quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender, let alone a Super Bowl favorite. So why would you trade away your first round pick to get a quarterback who's 37 years old, who has dealt with some injuries, and who's probably not going to take you much further than you were taken last year by Russell Wilson and Justin Fields?
No, and even, like, don't get me wrong. I think Matthew Stafford could win a playoff game more than any other option that the Steelers would have. I think he gives them that chance, but I don't think he beats Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in a 3-game stretch to win a Super Bowl. I just don't think that happens. I don't think he has the offensive line there to make that happen. I don't think he has the defense there to make that happen. And I definitely don't think that he has the wide receiver core there to make it happen. He's got an offensive coordinator and George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. That is his get to the Super Bowl effort. And again, like, this is not the year for the Steelers. It stinks to say this, but this is not the year for the Steelers to try to win a Super Bowl. It's not. Like, you're obviously trying to win a Super Bowl, but this is the year to figure things out so that you could eventually win the Super Bowl once again. That's where the Steelers are. Stop trying to Band-Aid it and get there, because the teams that get there haven't Band-Aided it. The last team to get there with Band-Aids might be the Rams with Matthew Stafford, and they still had most of their core that wasn't a Band-Aid, and then they brought in Matthew Stafford. You know, that's what they did. They brought in a couple of linemen. They went just all out on defense. I look at it and say, this is not the year. This is not the year to go all out. This is just the year to put the pieces together so that maybe you do it this year, but maybe you have a better chance next year. Maybe you have a better chance the year after that. Maybe you're on the verge of going on a run. That's how I look at Matthew Stafford. That's how I look at any quarterback this season, is just get the guy that has the most potential in 2 years. And we all know the answer to that one. All right. That's everything on our agenda. We're going to wrap up the show the same way we do every single day. We're going to start answering all of your questions, so make sure you toss them in the chat. Shout out to all of our new members and to everybody who jumped in to the call-in show today. Once again, it was awesome. Go check that out on our YouTube page. Nick, I'm going to toss it to you. Looks like we got a lot already. What do we got?
Yeah, let's kick things off with Michael. Appreciate you as always, Michael. Said, had a random thought the other day. What do you think was the bigger blow to the Steelers defense? Shazier's unfortunate injury or Stephon Tuitt's early retirement?
That's a great question. I personally think it was Stephon Tuitt. Like, the Ryan Shazier thing was a massive blow to the Steelers. Massive. But it was set up in a way where, like, that season it was detrimental. That season it was over. But I think more the emotional impact that it had on everybody was the reason that it didn't work out, more so than the physical or the roster spot. And then you had Devin Bush, who, if he never tears his ACL, Devin Bush is probably good. He's probably not a bad inside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers, even if he was, I mean, I don't even want to say a word. He just was out there to cover. He was out there to cover. I think Stephon Tuitt and the way that happened, which, you know, thoughts and prayers to both of these guys, man. They've been through the ringer when it comes to this stuff. Tuitt's, you replaced him with Larry O. Larry O had like a pretty okay season, but he's never been great with the Steelers. He's never been like that dude who's going to stick around forever for the Steelers. They've kept him here, and his first season was definitely his best, but Stephon Tuitt was a monster. That guy was, you know, he was a Pro Bowl, possible all-pro talent. He was still young. Like, it just felt like Stephon Tuitt was a piece to that defense that was a key piece. I mean, Ryan Shazier was the key piece, but Stephon Tuitt was the piece after Shazier. He was the guy that was going to be here. Like, if the Steelers defensive line to this day was Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and probably Keanu Benton, they're looking crazy good. Crazy good. So I would say Stephon Tuitt, just in my personal opinion. But I mean, that's a neck and neck situation.
Let's go to Smooty Booty, who said, wouldn't be shocked if GP is the one who wants Rodgers. They're both crazy.
We appreciate you, Smooty Booty. And also, every time your name pops up, I crack up. So I appreciate you. Yeah, I think GP and Aaron Rodgers would be a lot of fun to cover. A lot of fun to cover.
Let's go to Miguel, who says, thinking 2025 Aaron Rodgers is 2014 Aaron Rodgers is hilarious. The delusion is strong with some. Are people blind watching his steep decline over the last 5 years?
I think the amount of people who are Aaron Rodgers believers is small, but I also think the NFL and the players and the people within the NFL view players and people within the NFL very differently than you and I. Very differently. They look at things differently. They don't listen to shows like ours. They don't watch ESPN. You know what I mean? They just know names and know players, and they've played against them and they form their opinions off that. So I think it's different within the NFL, but yeah, I agree with you. I think the decline is steep, and I don't know if it's been 5 years. When was the last time? Didn't he win an MVP like this?
5 years ago, he won MVP. 4 years ago, he won MVP. 3 years ago, he had a decent season and then left Green Bay. 2 years ago, Achilles.
Yes.
Last year, people will give the excuse of the Achilles. So I think that's the train of thought for some people.
Yeah. So I'm not about it, but wouldn't be surprised if he comes out here and just puts on a show with a better team.
Miguel also says, who gives a crap what George Pickens wants? He needs to go elsewhere. He's not worth the trouble. Again, delusional to think GP is ever going to grow up.
Whew. You're coming in firing today,
Miguel's
Miguel.
throwing flames.
Yeah, flames, dude. Haymakers on this 439 episode of All Steelers Talk today. I haven't heard much about George Pickens. I'll try to keep this informative, this responsive. I feel like Miguel gave the opinion. I'll give the informative side. I haven't heard anything new about George Pickens. I'm sure I'm going to at the combine. I would imagine he's a hot topic of conversation, especially with the Steelers starting to wrap up that first round of scouting and heading into free agency and so on and so forth. I would imagine there's definitely some conversation about the future of George Pickens in Indianapolis.
All right, let's go to Ricky, who wants to know, what are your thoughts on this inside linebacker coaching hire of Scott McCurley?
I think he's got some good names. I think he's got Micah Parsons. I think he's got Leighton Vander Esch, which I was a huge fan of. I get that the injury kind of set him back and ended his career, unfortunately, but I think Jalen Smith was really good for a couple of years under him. Overshaw, who was there this year and was supposed to be the guy before the knee injury. Cool story on him, actually. Me and him flew back together, not like together, but we flew back on the same plane from the Senior Bowl. He didn't play in the Senior Bowl, and I overheard a conversation of his talking about how he doesn't think he's going to be drafted and how he thinks his career is going to end. And then he had one hell of a year, and it was pretty cool to know that was his train of thought and watch him overcome that. But I think he's got some good names. He spent some time in Green Bay, and Green Bay's defense has had some names as well. So I don't know. Assistant coaches are tough. Position coaches are really hard. Unless it's a Mike Munchak, unless it's I don't even know. Who are the big, massive quarterback coaches that Zach Robinson from a couple of years ago? Unless it's oh, wow, that's the name. They're all just in the mix, floating around, and you're hoping to find a good one. So I like the fact that he's a Pitt grad. So at least he knows the city of Pittsburgh and knows what we're about.
I'll say the one that you were head over heels about last year was Clint Kubiak.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If it's a Clint Kubiak, you're going, yeah, that guy. You know what I mean? When Kyle Shanahan was a position coach, that guy, oh, who do you want? I want Mike Shanahan's son. That's who I want. If it's not that guy, I have a hard time knowing. You're just kind of hoping for the best.
Let's go to Madeline, who says, do you like taking a wide receiver, then a running back in rounds 1 and 2 in the draft this year?
Yeah, yes and no. There's an argument for it. There's an argument against it. I like the idea of it, but I also really like the idea of a defensive lineman. And I think I'm growing on the idea of a defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds. I think that's the most realistic outcome as a defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds. We'll know a lot more after the first wave of free agency and where the Steelers go in that direction. And, Larry O's still on the roster. Do I expect that to be there in 3 weeks? No, but right now he's still on the roster. So I am growing on defensive line early, and I'm okay with either round, depending on who's around them.
All right, let's go to Madeline's second question here. Do you think Ashton Jeanty could really fall out of the top 10 this year?
Yeah, I do. I was looking back, okay? I was. Because I was watching the Rich Eisen show. I got to give credit where credit's due. I was watching the Rich Eisen show, and his partner in crime, his Nick Belsky, was talking about the Dallas Cowboys. And Eisen was pushing that they were going to draft Ashton Jeanty. And he made it clear. The last time the Dallas Cowboys drafted the big giant splashy name was Zeke. Since then, it hasn't been that way. So maybe it's not going to be Ashton Genty. And if it's not Ashton Genty, I do think there's a shot he slides. I do. I think once you get out of that top 10, there's not a lot of teams that need a running back. And there are a lot of teams that are going to look at this draft class and say, I'd rather get Caleb Johnson in the second round and so in this round. I think that's different with the Steelers.
All right, let's go over to Ernie, who says, what do you guys think about Sam Darnold if we don't get Justin Fields? And I'm thinking second string Jameis Winston because of his leadership, and he can bring joy to the locker room.
He could bring joy to the locker room. I'm all about Jameis Winston, man. I'm all about Jameis. I would love to cover Jameis. I would love to meet Jameis Winston. Never met him. Would love to meet him. Sam Darnold, I don't think he fits what the Steelers are looking for. I think he's a little bit of a risk in an offense that doesn't have as many weapons or as good of an offensive line. I also think he's going to be expensive. So my thoughts on Sam Darnold is if you are the Steelers and your recruiting process tells you, or your scouting process tells you Sam Darnold's going to be good for a long time, okay. But if you're taking a shot on him, he's going to be more expensive than Justin Fields. And I don't think he has as much upside as Justin Fields does at this point in his career. So I'm a little skeptical on it. Obviously, I'd pick him over any of the veterans, like the older veterans and Daniel Jones, but I don't know how all in I am on Sam Darnold.
Let's go to Carl Spackler, who says, thoughts on this? Rodgers and Devontae for 2 years, and we draft Arch Manning. Arch learns from Rodgers for 1 year, and the relationship he grew with Devontae then starts that with GP.
There's no chance GP is here long enough to go 2 quarterbacks. I just don't believe, unless there's drastic changes, I just don't see that. I don't see that being a thing. I don't see George here for the end of Rodgers and Archie Manning and long term. That doesn't seem to be what the Steelers do in the first place. Like, they signed Deontay to a pretty team-friendly deal. I don't think George is going to take a team-friendly deal. I don't think they're gonna extend George. I do like the idea of a bridge quarterback if you were to get Archie Manning. That being said, you're essentially signing Aaron Rodgers to say you better lose 13 games this season, at least 13 games this season, because we're going to need Archie Manning. So that's how you're going to end your career. I don't think it would be great in hindsight, or if it happened, it would be great to go from Rodgers to Archie Manning. But I don't think it's realistic.
Let's go to Danny, who says, did you guys send Pittsburgh weather here to Delaware beaches? It's 20 degrees and snowing. Noah, what's the best realistic chance that Fields comes back if the Steelers do sign a veteran quarterback as well?
Oh, it's zero. It's zero. First off, hope that the snow stops. It needs to stop everywhere. I'm tired of the snow, man. Tired of the snow. It's almost March. Where that damn groundhog, I'm not a fan of him. I don't think there's any chance Justin Fields would come back if the Steelers signed a veteran that has the potential to start. Justin wants a starting job. He wants the opportunity to be the starting quarterback. He's not going to get that this year if the Steelers sign another veteran. If it's a Jameis, if it's a Daniel Jones, I could see that because he could say, yeah, that's not real competition. I'm the guy. If it's Russ, if it's Aaron Rodgers, if it's Sam Darnold, it's 100% he's gone because he's not going to come back and do that again.
All right, let's go down to Candy, who says, I'm pretty computer savvy, but can't see where to become a member. Other channels show membership as an option next to subscribe. I know a lot of people in the comment section today have said that they've struggled to see it on mobile, but if you're on like a desktop or a tablet, it's right there because it should be as soon as you go to our channel homepage, it should be this video, which is whatever video is live, and then become a member and joins the button. So it should be there. If not, I got to look into like on mobile devices where it would be at, because I would imagine it should still be there. You're muted.
Sorry. I also just tossed the link in our chat here on the live stream. So first off, Candy, appreciate you. Definitely appreciate you. And if you go to this link that I just tossed in there, which hopefully it's a link that actually works. If not, we will toss it in the description of the video, and we'll do that for everyone moving forward. That's probably a good idea to help some people out.
All right, let's jump to Irresistible Fan, who says, love the show, guys. Rooney keeps making comments about preferring Wilson over Fields. Do you think he's trying to tank next season after what happened last year? It blows my mind that they're still dragging this out.
Yeah, I first off, Rooney, two things. First off, a irresistible fan with the dog, yeah, it just makes sense. You know what I mean? It makes sense. Second, it's not Rooney making the comments. It's our good friend Mark Caboli making the comments about how he believes Rooney prefers Russ over Justin, which might be true. That could definitely be true. And if it is, I think that internal dialogue is what's holding things up. But I also think that they're just holding themselves up right now and seeing what's available and trying to play things out and have conversations with Aaron Rodgers and have conversations with Russell Wilson and have conversations with so on and so forth as things mature. I think it's a slow process for the Steelers because for some reason they're weighing all their options, which is a classic Pittsburgh Steelers thing to do when there's no need to do it. But I don't think it's Rooney like coming out publicly saying it. I do think there's a chance that he does prefer Russ over Justin, although what I've been told, and I have not been told anything since, is that they prefer Justin over Russ, and we'll see if that changes, but I don't, from where we stand right now, I don't think it has.
Let's go to Doug, who says, Nick and Noah, Sid, plus or minus 2 points tomorrow night in the Four Nations face-off final. And does Canada make it closer game than the last one? I say they do. I think the last one was 2-1. So if it's any closer than that, it looks like Canada's going to be singing the anthem at the end.
That would be, could you, I'm too America pride right now with this hockey tournament to even think about them losing. So we'll all be locked in. I might be like bundled up in an American flag. Who knows? I only get this patriotic twice in every 4 years. And that is the World Cup and this one we got a shot. So I'm all about it.
Let's go to, I'll say it over 2 points. And I do think
I was going to say that's a you thing.
Yeah. Let's go to Grayson, who says, hey guys, since Noah is going to Indy next week, I was curious if you two have ever chatted with Tone Diggs from the Pat McAfee show. I'm sure you guys know that he is the vocal Steelers fan on that show.
Yes, I do. I'm well aware of Tone Diggs. Tone Diggs is a good dude from what I've heard, but I've never met him. I would love to meet him. I would love to meet him. I'd love to meet Pat McAfee. I hope I get the chance too. I tell Caboli, every time I catch Caboli at training camp, like doing a Zoom call or on a radio show or a FaceTime or something, I try to walk by and say something stupid really loud so that I could be on the Pat McAfee show. Like my voice could be in the background of the Pat McAfee show. I've yet to do it while he's been on work calls. He's been on like other radio shows. He's been featured all over the place. And you could like hear me walking by saying like, yo, is that a hot dog in your pocket? And never once has it been the Pat McAfee show. So I hope I get to meet them if they are there, which I don't know if they will be, but if they are, it would be pretty cool to run into either of them.
Let's skip down to Real-ish. Appreciate you as always. Says, who would you want to replace Mike Tomlin since so many want to see him gone?
I don't think I'd replace Mike Tomlin with anybody right now. I don't. There's nobody out there. You know, Ben Johnson would have been the name. Aaron Glenn would have been a good name too. But like, I don't think Kellen Moore is that good of a coaching hire. I'm sorry. That could prove me wrong, but I just don't think so. I think the Liam Cohn in Jacksonville stunned me. That one I wouldn't want in Pittsburgh. There was nobody else. It was Ben Johnson was the guy for me. He was the guy. He went to Chicago, and now where I sit here right now, there is nobody out there that I think I'd replace Tomlin with.
All right, let's go back to Grayson, who says, hey, Nick and Noah, any update on Cole Holcomb? No, I'm just kidding. But do you have a core memory of the scariest hit you've witnessed in person, in game, or during practice?
Oh, that's a really good one. That's a really, really good one. I mean, I was there when DeMonte KZ hit Michael Pittman Jr. a couple of years ago. That was pretty crazy. Not in practice. Nobody gets real crazy in practice ever. In some games, I've seen some hits. The DeMonte KZ Michael Pittman one comes to mind. There's got to be so many others that I'm just 100% blanking on. But I would say that's the most recent one that like I was there and we all just went like Yeah, he might be dead. Traylon Burks, when they played the Titans, I believe the same year at Acrisure Stadium, got smoked on the sidelines by somebody, and that was very scary. So those two were big ones for me.
Let's go to Doug, who says, love the show, guys. Do you expect we will be able to get someone who can help us more on kickoff returns next year?
You gotta hope so, right? You gotta hope so. I don't know. I think anybody could have helped. I probably would have done my best to help, and I think I would have had a fair shot to do more than what was done. So, yeah, I do believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers will have a new set of kick returners. Maybe Jaylen Warren's back there, depending on what the running back room looks like. If Jalen's the number one, they're not going to put him back there. But I would imagine there's at least one new kick returner this season.
Yeah, you got to take away the free space. I mean, with Cordero out there, he is a historic kick returner in his day, but that day has passed. And he was a free space out there. We've talked about this before, that anytime he was out there next to Jalen, everybody was always kicking it towards Cordero because they knew if he catches it, he's not taking it back 100 yards. He's not taking it back 80 yards. He's just not going to get through the defenses like that. So if you take away the free space, I think automatically you're a little bit better. Even if it's Jalen and somebody else, you just got to take away that free space.
Yep, I agree.
Let's go to Walter, who says, what are your thoughts on, in free agency, getting a big name corner and a big name defensive tackle or offensive guard, trading for Cooper Kupp, and then drafting wide receiver first round, D tackle second round, and running back in the third?
I don't mind it. I just don't know if they have the money for it. I don't know if they're going to have the money for a big name defensive tackle and a big name corner. I mean, a big name corner is going to go for, $13 million, maybe plus. And you add a quarterback onto that, you add a big name defensive tackle who's going to be like 20. I don't know if maybe 15, depending on how big the name is. That alone is 28, maybe $30 million right there. Plus a quarterback is another $20 million right there. Cooper Kupp is 15. And then you just go and draft everybody else. An offensive guard, I don't think is in the works. Like, we have a question here from AJ about targeting Trey Smith. I mean, Trey Smith's a phenomenal name. That would be a huge get for the Steelers, but I don't think they have the funds for it, and I don't think they can allocate the funds to go get an offensive guard. So I'd be about a defensive tackle. I'd be about Cooper Kupp. I'd be about that draft order. I don't know if you're going to be able to get a defensive tackle and a big name corner. I also think that just maybe the corners, I think you could get a Tre'Davious Ward or Charvarius Ward for probably like $2 to $5 million less than you could a Byron Murphy. And if you could do that, I'd be okay with that if that's what we consider big name. But I think it stops there.
Let's jump down to Candy, who says, number 7 in his prime with this current team, are they Super Bowl contenders?
They are Super Bowl contenders. Definitely. I don't know about I don't know if you're getting past Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, but I do think that if it came down to it, I think I would. Like, I think this is crazy to say, but I think I would. I think if you put Ben and Patrick Mahomes on the same team and there were 3 minutes left in the game and they, I think whoever had the ball first and got down there and scored, they're going to lose because the other team's going to go down in a minute 10 and score because that's who those guys are. I think Ben could beat them. Yeah. I mean, I talked about it in the call-in show today. Like, Ben Roethlisberger in today's NFL is still Ben Roethlisberger. And that guy's so underappreciated what he was doing. So 100%. I think Ben with this team, I think he really does make them a Super Bowl contender. If we're talking Ben healthy, able to walk, move. I'm not talking prime, but like prime Ben, definitely. I'm even saying like right before the elbow injury, Ben. I think I'd still be okay with that.
I was going to say the shell of Ben Roethlisberger carried this team to the playoffs. I think prime Ben Roethlisberger could carry a very similar team into being a contender because the defense can stand on its head when it needs to, especially if it has an offense that's putting up Ben with the Killer Bees put up 35 points a game.
Yeah.
So I think that even with this current crop of talent, I think he could put up 25 plus consistently. And I think this defense, as TJ Watt always says, give us 20. Give us 20 and we'll win the game 9 times out of 10. And that still kind of remains to be the fact.
Yeah. Ben, if Ben was in the NFL right now, he'd be the second best quarterback in the NFL. Like, hands down, no questions asked in his prime. He's better than Josh Allen, better than Lamar Jackson, better than all of them. So, yeah, Patrick would be the only one that has him surpassed, and I think that would make the Steelers very scary.
Let's go to Real-ish again, who says, am I crazy for wanting the Steelers to draft 2 defensive tackles, 2 wide receivers, 2 cornerbacks, and 2 running backs? I'd love for the Steelers to get Barron and Harmon with Besh and Omarion Hampton.
I mean, I don't think there's enough that we'd really be playing Madden with these trade ups to go get these draft picks. But yeah, I mean, I like the 2 defensive tackles. I like maybe double dipping at wide receiver. I think I like that the least. I'm definitely not trying to double dip at running back unless they absolutely have to. I think Jalen, another veteran that is good in an RB3 role / a kick returner role, is a good spot to be in, plus a rookie. Drafting 2 corners seems like maybe it's an unnecessary need, but I think there could be an argument there compared to, I mean, the cornerback class is much better rounds 2 on than it is early stages of round 1. So I think I'd be about it.
Let's go to AJ, who says, last question. Have you watched film on Azareye'h Thomas, and what round do you think he'll go in? And do you think the Steelers have a shot to get him?
I have not watched film on Azareye'h Thomas, to be honest with you. I will though. I'll add him to my list right now. I've been going through every name somebody tosses me, I dive into, most likely like that night. So this name I'm gonna have to write down, but I think I could do it.
Let's go to Killicam, who says, fun little question for both of you guys. If you had to pick between these 2 former Steelers who have said they would come back for free, who would you pick? Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell?
Antonio Brown. And I mean, Le'Veon Bell, great athlete, great running back in his prime, fantastic. Antonio Brown was the best wide receiver of his generation. So I'm going AB all day. I think AB makes any quarterback better. And I think you do. I mean, AB on the team last year, you can only imagine what's going on. So yeah, I'd go AB. Plus, it's always been my dream. Like,
cover AB.
Yeah, like that was the one guy I missed out on. I just missed AB, and I would like to cover AB.
I think neither of them would be able to play if they tried to come back to the NFL, but I think of the two of them, Antonio Brown is more likely. So I'll go with you on that one, and I'll say AB. Let's go to Matthew, who says, why do people love Duck Hodges so much? He never helped out our team at all, aside from losing game after game and throwing 4 interceptions per game.
Duck Hodges was a guy who tried, man, and he had a great personality, and I think him and Mason Rudolph did a lot to salvage an 8-8 season. Steelers would probably be in a much better place if they just lost out and said, we aren't trying to make the playoffs with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph, but they did what it did. Duck Hodges was a great dude. That's why I like him. He's a great guy. So shout out.
I'll say it's a little thing called expectations. Once you got to Duck Hodges, did you really expect the Steelers to do anything? So anything he did good was a bonus. Anything that he did bad was expected. So that's why I liked Duck Hodges, because once Ben went down and once Mason Rudolph looked like Mason Rudolph did in 2019, I was like, all right, anything that they win is just a bonus this season, because this is not supposed to be a year that they do absolutely anything. That's the year. If you want to look back, that's the year that they should have bottomed out and finished 2 in whatever. But they didn't, because
I don't know who the quarterbacks were that came in that next season, but 2020 would have been 2020 would have been, I don't know who would have been 2020, but there would have definitely been some. That might have been Justin Fields.
That was Joe Burrow was first overall, so that would have been nice. Tua, Justin Herbert.
What could have been? Yeah. What could have been? Justin Fields. Justin Fields went 11th in that draft. So
did he? Mekhi Becton went 11th in that draft.
No, so he must have went the year after. He was 2021 then. Yeah.
Still,
yeah. What could have been? What could have been?
Jefferson was in that draft.
What could have been?
I got to stop this. I got to stop. I'm killing myself.
What could have been? Who did they get in 2020? Who did the Steelers draft in 2020?
Let me
'Cause
bring it
that
back
is-
up because I just pulled it down. 2020, the Steelers in the first round picked.
I think I have
They didn't
an
pick in
idea.
the first round.
Oh, they traded for
They
Minka.
traded for Minka.
And in the second round, they drafted Chase Claypool.
Yep.
Oh, what could have been? What could have been?
Let's go to Renee, who says, Noah and Nick, what are your thoughts on the wide receiver Trey Harris out of Ole Miss? Greetings from Germany, by the way.
Hey, shout out. I like Trey Harris. I do like Trey Harris. I think he's a good second round talent. He's a name that he's very physical. He's got the size. I think he's got the speed too. He's a guy, like, that's the thing, is like when people talk Matthew Golden or Luther Burden in the first round, I'm much more comfortable with a name like Trey Harris in the second. I think that he fits the place. Like he fits the draft pick way better. You know, if you get him at the end of the second round, I feel very comfortable about his upside and what he brings right now compared to Matthew Golden and Burden at pick 21. I just think you could get better talent. So I like Trey Harris. He's a name that I'm watching at the NFL Combine, but I don't think he's going to move a whole ton. I think he's going to be pretty secure in that second round spot. It's just a matter of if he'd fall far enough to like 53.
Let's go to Rodney, who says, who do you think has the higher upside, Roman Wilson or Calvin Austin?
Roman Wilson, most likely. But to be honest with you, if you asked me the day that they both came into the NFL, I would go Calvin Austin because that dude should have been a second round pick. I think his upside's massive. It's just a matter of size. I'd also like to see him with a good offense and a good quarterback. I hope he gets that one day. I think right now it's Roman Wilson, but Calvin Austin would be my answer if you asked me day one of both of their careers.
All right, let's go to ND Joe. And the ND stands for North Dakota. He says, I would have snow other than negative 31 degree temperatures we have seen out here in North Dakota this week. By the way, play, bench, cut, Lambert, James Harrison, and TJ Watt.
Appreciate you. I would never in a million years. I would have moved yesterday, Joe. I would have moved yesterday. There's no chance I'd be living in negative 31 degrees. Dude, it is 25 degrees outside right now. I haven't left my house in 2 days, and I won't leave my house until it warms up. I need 40-degree weather for me to be able to leave comfortably. I'm picky. I get it. Maybe I'm a little bit snooty with the weather. I don't care. Like I'm 29 years old and already trying to convince my wife that we should move to Florida because it would be better. Play, bench, cut. Dude, you're playing Jack Lambert. I mean, I don't think there's a question there. You're playing Jack Lambert. I'm benching TJ. I'm cutting James. I think that's the closest one of the three that we've had. And I think there's an argument to play TJ over Jack Lambert. But I think out of respect to the poster, you're going Jack Lambert.
Really? You think this is the closest one? I thought it would have been Bettis, Harris, and Le'Veon was closer than this one to me.
I think this one's closer, easier to pick because you understand what you should pick. But I think that the group of them, like these are three Hall of Famers. So sure. I think talent-wise is maybe not the closest, but like this is the most talented of the groups that we've had so far. I'd say
Fair enough. That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy a cold, but another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.